We want to thank everybody for joining us in this very important topic of budgeting. My name is Robin Bennett. I'm one of the co-founders of the Dog Gurus. Susan Briggs over there on the other screen. She's the other co-founder of the Dog Gurus. And someone asked me this today, like where we live. And so
Oh,
we live in different states. So someone was like, why are you guys always on different screens? Because I'm in Colorado and Susan's in Texas. As long as we have worked together, which has been a long time that we've worked, starting from when we wrote a book together before the internet was all that popular. We've never lived in the same state, which is like a little known fact. We've always lived in other places. If you want
we
any
were
information
we
about
were
what we
working
do,
virtual before working virtual was cool.
exactly. Before Dropbox, before Google Docs,
Before
before
Zoom,
yeah, before Zoom. We just had
email and phone.
exactly. Anyway, so getting back to our topic, we're like very distracted today, apparently. Getting back to our topic today this is the third quarter of the fourth quarter of the year, going into the fourth quarter of the year. And for many of us, especially Susan and I, that is the time that we start planning for next year. So we start doing our annual planning, we start doing our strategic planning, and we start doing our budget planning. And I know a lot of pet care facilities don't have budgets. I'm just going to tell you that you should work to get one going. And I'll kick it over to you, Susan, to start talking about why budgeting is important and maybe some tips on getting started.
Yeah, as far as budgeting, it's get started and make progress every year because you'll get better at it. So don't expect perfection right away. But what you will find is if you start working and operating from a budget, then you have a roadmap of where you're going, which will help not only with your business and how much money you're going to have in your business, but your own pay. I know that was one of the hardest things when I operated my pet care center, was not knowing how much I was going to make as a business owner made it very hard and sometimes even very stressful at home because you didn't know what you were going to contribute to household expenses. So then that made it hard to plan anything for your household, whether that's vacation or remodeling. The only way that I have found that you can count on knowing what your salary is going to be and giving yourself that raise that I know you deserve is through budgeting. And I know, Robin, you and I, we didn't used to budget, but we've been doing it for several years, and it's made a huge difference in our business too.
Yeah, it has made a huge difference. And I think like a lot of you, when I was just doing my training in daycare, I didn't budget a lot then either. I was like, I got money, look, that's good. And now that I see the impact, even for the dog gurus, it's so much easier to plan. For one thing, we once we start, because again, if you're, especially if your business is doing well, you don't really think about budgeting. You're just like, oh, whatever, maybe I should raise my rates, whatever. But you don't have any concrete numbers to work off of. So now that we do our budgeting for the dog gurus, and again, as Susan starts mentioned in the beginning, we started small. Like we started with basic line items, basic figures. We didn't do a ton of crazy detail. I'll tell you now, our budget is like full of crazy detail because our CFO has taken it to the next level. So every number we have, there is solid justification behind that number as to why that number is what it is. But the great thing is that when we are looking at what we want to take home, we can now see it. Is that realistic, or is it just like a wish list? Like we hope we can take home a paycheck of X amount, or do we actually have the numbers to support that? If you want to do any kind of renovation, so maybe you know that you want to replace the flooring, or you want to replace some kind of mats, or that you need a new computer because your computer is driving you crazy, or whatever it is, you can build that all into the budget. So you can plan for those expenses and not freak out or just hope that, well, I hope by a couple months I'll have the money. You actually plan for it.
Yeah.
The other big thing that I like to talk about is, because we all know we're in a seasonal industry where there's really months that are really big and months that are not so good, you can plan for that. So you can know by looking at your budget, okay, I need to hold over some money from maybe December because January is not going to be as strong. Now, we all know that intrinsically, but it's great to actually have the number to say, how much should I set aside? How much can I just pay myself or give my staff a bonus or whatever it is? You have those numbers. And then the budget helps you actually to market to make sure that you're reaching those goals. So it really does change the way you look at your business?
Yeah, and I know last year it was really hard because we didn't know what was going to happen post COVID. But I think now we've got a good 6 months in, and I think you do have the information. And I think doing a budget will be a healthy way to get out of the we're operating under COVID. We're operating in what is our new reality for business right now. And one of the things that we've talked to all of our members, everybody's struggling with, and we've done Facebook Lives about this, is hiring staff and keeping staff and having to increase wage ranges and all. And so to me, that's another very important reason why you should do a budget, is so that you can forecast what you need to be paying staff and how many staff you need for the revenue. Some people have backed off and are not operating at full capacity because they don't have the staff. And so by doing a budget, you can say, okay, maybe that's going to carry through first quarter, maybe second quarter, but let's plan to be back at full staff and full capacity by next summer. And you know what steps you've got to do to get there, even if that means you're increasing wages, which then may mean you have to increase rates. And a budget helps you plan all that out and see what it looks like before you're making the business decisions to actually give those increases or increase those rates.
So if you're gonna, let's say you're gonna start out doing a budget for the very first time ever, you have never done it before, which we know there's a lot of people in that boat. I would say the first thing to start with is, if you have whatever your software is that runs your financials, for most of us, it's QuickBooks. I would start by just printing that out, or printing a profit and loss statement out, with some detail of your chart of accounts, like basic. Again, I wouldn't try to go into too much detail, but I would get the basic high level overview of major expenses and major revenue streams. Ideally, the one thing that we see most commonly is that the revenue streams are not broken out. So you might have, let's say you have daycare training and lodging. You have a revenue stream that just says income and it's a one big number. That's the one thing I would try to do a little bit of research to figure out what are those revenue streams by service for the income, and start there. If you really can't figure that out, or if you're like, are you kidding me? I'd have to go back to 12 months worth, or I guess right now about 8 months worth of stuff, then just do a percentage. Just go, okay, I think that lodging for this year, not so much for last year, but for this year, maybe lodging is 60% of your business. Then just take that revenue number and take 60% of that and put it into the lodging. You just want to start somewhere, and it doesn't have to be too painful to get it started. And I would start with whatever numbers you have, not some kind of skipping last year, because we know those numbers are going to be skewed. But this year, like Susan said, we have enough data this year. You could even go back to 2019 if you wanted to, and take some kind of an average if you need to. But you want to just start with, what is your main chart of accounts? What are your main expenses? What's your major income? And start to map that out month by month. You can start with just a report that QuickBooks will give you,
Mhm.
tell you this is what your budget is, and then you might want to tweak it as you get going. So what other tips do you have for people getting started out?
It's great what you said. Definitely focus on your revenue, understand how many pets you're servicing, and what your rates are for that. And then for your expenses, I would spend your time on the big three, which are definitely your wages, because that's number one. For those of you that are in facilities, your facility costs are usually the next highest as a group behind your wages, and then maybe your advertising marketing. The rest of those expenses, as far as supplies and maintenance and repairs, all that often is pretty much the same year over year. And if you are using QuickBooks and have the version where it has a budget function, it will create a draft of your budget based on your prior 12 months numbers automatically. And then you can just go in and change things that you know are different. And that's one thing, as you said, Robin, print that out. I would print it out month by month because of that seasonality you talked about. And QuickBooks will do that. You just ask for a P&L with the months in it. And that's the way the budget's going to be set up. And then just ask yourself, do I think January of 2022 will be more or less than January of 2021 in just your revenue and your top three categories? And let everything else just sit there, because I think those are the numbers that are the biggest, and then also the ones that you can impact.
Yeah, and I would definitely look at your percentages of your labor to your revenue as well. So that's one way that we really helped people to say, are you paying too much in expenses? A lot of your expenses, like Susan said, they're not, it's hard to impact them. You need cleaning supplies. Certainly, you can put in processes and procedures to make sure people aren't wasting the cleaning supplies. And I would definitely do that. But for the most part, there's not a lot you can do with some of the basic expenses that you have. I would definitely look at them. But when it comes to wages, that is one that I would look at where we see people that will have up to 60% of their revenue is attributed towards wages. And I don't, that doesn't include the owner salary. That's just wages of the staff. When you start seeing that number over 50%, it's definitely time to look at what you're doing with your employees. Do you have too many staff for the dogs that you have? Or are you it could be that you're just not charging enough. So
Right.
maybe you need to increase your rates. Maybe your staffing is you couldn't possibly do with fewer staff, then you need to raise your rates maybe so that you get a lower percentage of your payroll as compared to your revenue. And a lot of the other thing we sometimes see is too many chiefs and not enough Indians, so to speak. So too many leaders or managers or supervisors and not at a higher rate and not enough of the workers at maybe a lower entry level rate. So look at that as well. And sometimes that just happens when we just aren't necessarily paying attention to kind of the growth of the business and maybe promotions that you've done again without necessarily considering what payroll percentage you're affecting. But we like a payroll percentage under 50%. 40 is even better, 35 is even better. It does a little bit depend on your services though, because daycare and enrichment services generally are higher a higher staffing, but that's also those are also services that should have higher revenue as well. So you definitely want to look at your revenue streams and how much you're charging.
Yeah, and so we're happy to answer questions. This is a very safe place to ask questions about budgeting because let me tell you, there's no stupid questions when it comes to getting a budget started, operating to a budget. So we're happy to help. And I don't think you can throw a question at us that we haven't heard because we've talked about this, I don't know, seems like forever. Every year I
A
like
lot.
to talk about budget because it really does make a difference. And once you get your budget up and created, the reason it's so valuable is then you can compare what you actually did to your budget and then say, wow, okay, I'm off. Where am I off? Is this revenue stream lower revenue? Is this expense higher than I expected? And then you can go in and figure out why. And it just empowers you to really understand your business and how the numbers drive the results, which in the end is your pay and also the value of your business when you go to exit. And this stuff's important when you're starting to think about exiting.
Yeah, and I would say the one thing, and Haley will get I'll get to your question in just a second, but the one thing that I would look at and have a process for is I would right now for 2022, I would put on your calendar a standard meeting with yourself, a standing meeting with yourself to review your budget as compared to your actual. So we at the Doggers, we typically do that the second Monday of every month. Most of the time that gives our accountant and our CFO enough time to close out the books for the month before. You can't do it right at the beginning because you need a few days to have everything clear. But then we want to actually look at what did my budget say and what were my actuals? Were they close? Were they over? Were they short? Because that again, like Susan said, that gives you the numbers to say, whoa, we did so much better than we thought. Then hey, have a party, celebrate. If maybe you didn't do as well as you thought, then look at why. Were your numbers realistic? The one pet peeve I think that I see is people will just say, I'm just going to increase my budget by 10 or 15 or 20%. I'm just going to make more next year. And then they do a budget, but if you're going to expect more revenue because you're going to have more clients or more higher pet per, what's it called? A higher pet revenue per pet. That's it.
Oh,
Higher revenue per pet. You've done something to actively increase that revenue per pet. Then that's great. But a lot of people will just say, I'm going to make more money, but there's no reason why.
yeah.
So you have to look at that. Like, why are you saying you're going to make more money? because it's not necessarily just going to happen without a plan. So that's the other reason for budgeting. The other thing is, if you look at those months where I was talking about you might be shorter, do you change your staffing in those months? A lot of times we don't, because we have full-time employees who want a job. Well, in that case, then look at, are there other activities that you can do? Can you offer a special party? Can you offer a special event? Can you do something online? Whatever it is that your employees are being able to actively be engaged. And so your payroll isn't just skyrocketing because you don't have enough dogs. Sometimes people do special projects during that time as well. But I would be looking at, maybe you're still doing a special project, but I would also be looking at doing stuff that brings in additional revenue. But if you start that budget planning now, then you can start to say, okay, for this month where we're going to be lower because of the season, we're going to have a special party or two special parties or whatever it is. So you can actually plan to bring in more revenue. I really am, I'm a firm believer that this business should not be as seasonal as we let it get.
Right.
We just all go, January is going to suck. Well, we know that every year January is going to suck. So right now, do something to plan an event in January that brings in additional revenue. Don't just say, oh, January is not going to be very good. It could be, but you got a plan behind it. That's a pet peeve right there with me. All right, I'm going to go to Haley's question. Oh, this is a good one, Haley, because she said, do you have any advice on hourly rate for employees?
Yeah, I think you need to look in your market and consider what your positions are. Are they truly entry level, and what are entry level people being paid at other businesses? I would propose, if you're investing in staff that are being professionally trained to be pet care providers, that you may want even a little bit above entry level. And so then it would be, okay, what do I want? A person with 1 or 2 years experience that's going to be looking for a career in pet care, what would they make? And you can look for, everybody's got help wanted ads right now. So I would go on Indeed as if I was searching for a job and look at veterinarians and other pet care places. I would say feedback we're getting is probably $12 an hour is on the low end in most urban markets, to where you're paying up to 15. It also depends on if you got minimum wage mandate increases going into effect. But most people we know have had to raise their entry level wage to get the quality of employee that they want.
Yeah, and I think that is something that we have seen a change in the past 18 months from, is that a lot of the entry level positions across the board, not just in the pet care industry, but anywhere, are going up. And so it used to be that you were competing with a lot of other entry level jobs all around the same little over minimum wage kind of amount. We are seeing that go up. So I do think the pet care industry is going to need to get to that $12 to $15 starting point to get employees just at entry level. And that's a kind of a shock to our industry, I think. But I don't think when I had my business, I started everyone at minimum wage. Even if you had experience, I
Mhm.
started you at minimum wage. And then after 3 months, you would get a raise of some sort. If you had a lot of experience and you were doing a great job during that first 3 months, you got a bigger raise. If you were truly brand new, you would get a tiny raise, but not a lot. But everybody started at minimum wage. I don't think you can do that right now. I don't think you'll get any staff if that's your hiring policy. So that is a big change for our industry. And I think that because of that, your pricing is going to have to go up. There's no other way about it. If you want to take money yourself, if you want to pay yourself, which obviously we would recommend that you do. So you want to make sure that you can pay those employees, bring them in and keep them, but also still pay yourself, which means you're going to need to look at rate increases. All right. So Lisa said, and we talked a little bit about this for people with new budgets, but who have a business, but any tips on budgeting for a brand new business that's just opening its doors?
Hopefully you did a business plan and had forecast for your revenue and expenses as a new business. And if you did, that's basically your budget. If you didn't have to do a business plan and do forecasts, then that's what I would definitely recommend. So you need to, look at each of your key services, what you're charging, and then think about what are going to be your units or your occupancy. We need to look at occupancy in this industry. So if you have capacity to house 50 dogs a day, when you're a brand new business, if you can hit 30% occupancy a month, that's great. That's really high. So I'd probably start at 5, 10, 15, and build up to that 35% occupancy. Do the same thing for your daycare, your grooming, your other services. Grow the occupancy as you have a marketing plan to grow your client base. And that's why it's important, as Robin said, you can't just say, I want to have more business without saying, how are you going to get the business? Because it may cost you money to get the business. You may need to have a marketing budget. Where are you going to market? How much does it cost to market there? Or are you going to do advertising? So you start with your revenue and build your revenue plan, and then you have to have expenses to support that, either marketing, your facility costs, or your payroll. How many employees is it going to take? As you grow and have more clients, you're going to have to add more employees. And at some point, you may have to add a supervisor. You may have to have front desk staff, fewer hours initially, and then you'll grow that. So you really have to sit down and think about your plan to grow the business, how your volume is going to grow, and then the expenses related to that that need to grow with it. And
And
just take
that,
them one at a time.
yeah, and for that, for the new, for not someone that's just starting out, like you're talking about, that is really an estimate. But now for those businesses, that monthly meeting with yourself or with your CFO, if you've got a CFO, where you're going to look at actuals compared to your budget becomes really important, because those numbers are going to impact the rest of the year. So if you're really over the first month, which is an awesome place to be, then you want to adjust up the next month, maybe the next 2 months. I wouldn't necessarily change the entire year. I would go quarter by quarter. But on the other hand, if you do a budget for the first month and then you're really low that first month, then you need to really say, okay, what do I need to change to make sure I'm going to hit these budget numbers for next month? And you might have to adjust things there as well. But it becomes a constant back and forth for you. The good thing is you have the numbers that you can use to plan whether you need to do more marketing or less staffing or more staffing or whatever it is. I would just say that our biggest push is to make sure we never have met a business owner where when they get short of money, they don't pay their staff. The money, the short money always comes out of your pocket, the business owner's pocket, because we all pay our staff no matter what. We don't really want that to happen. We want to make sure that you can pay your staff and pay yourself. And the only way to do that is have a really good understanding of the numbers and what's going on in your business, especially when you're first starting out, because you really don't even have history to go off of for that. So I think it becomes really important. All right. So Haley said living wage in Asheville, North Carolina is 1771. And that's not uncommon. That's pretty much what we're seeing around the country, is that that wage, that starting wage, is getting to be a lot higher. And I think COVID has caused people to rethink their priorities and want that higher wage as well, even if it's a entry level job.
Yeah. So if you're in a market where wages are that high, I would want to make sure that you've got the value built in or marketing to avatar that can afford to pay the prices that you need to get for your services to cover that high of a wage. And so it's making sure that your brand is set up and the value of your services to explain to those people that's why they're going to pay you more for daycare, boarding, and lodging, is because the value's there with the professional staff.
Yeah, and we have a couple of different resources in our store for those that have never really looked at their numbers, that have had business coming in. Pet Profits is a really good tool that helps you to sit down and really look at, for what you're charging, are you charging the right amount for what you're offering and what it costs you? Most facilities that we work with typically set their prices by saying, oh, I looked at others in my area and I charged the highest, or I charge. Most of them are like, I didn't want to be too high, so I'm like in the middle of everyone else in my area. That's a terrible, it's a good thing to know. It's a terrible way to set your prices though, because you actually don't know what it's costing. You have to set your prices based on what it costs you. So figuring out that, using that Pet Profits document, and it's like $40, but it takes you through a process to figure out what your current expenses are and what your price should be compared to what you are charging. It also helps you to look at your discounts, which we've talked a lot about, why you should not discount your services because that's money out of your pocket. So that I would look at that tool, but then we do have a budgeting tool as well that will help to take you through the whole budgeting process, and it's a step-by-step process that helps you to get your budget done in 60 days, which is really our goal would be that everybody has a budget by the end of the year. Knowing that November is a busy time during Thanksgiving for the United States, and then Christmas obviously is a busy time. Even despite that, if you start now, you could still get your budget done by the end of the year. So I would look at that as well. And I'm going to put a link. Susan's actually doing a free webinar tomorrow
I love
on
to do this webinar. I love helping people feel comfortable jumping in and creating a budget. So I'd love to have you join me.
yeah, so I put a link to that. It's tomorrow the 13th. Is tomorrow the 13th? Yeah, the third. No, tomorrow. Wait, is it today? It's today actually at 5.
Okay, that's right.
It's
So
today at 5 Eastern. So a little bit after this call, there will be that free webinar. So you can sign up for that. And we'll go into detail on how to actually put your budget together. So take a look at that. So Samantha said that it's been a challenge in terms of raising prices. We put a few price increases and now clients are getting upset. And then she said this, which kind of goes to what Susan was just talking about. It's mostly our older clients, though. Our new clients are great.
yeah.
So what that tells me is that you are starting that a little bit of your avatar has started to change. So your ideal client, and for many of us, I will say when most people start out their business, they will take anybody that's paying them. That's just the reality because you've got bills to pay, you've got rent to pay, you've got staff to pay. So the two things that we usually see with new businesses, initially they'll take anybody, any paying client, even the ones that are a little bit more challenging, or maybe the dogs are a little bit more challenging, or they give them a discount because they don't think they're going to get the business anyway else. And then usually after a couple of years, usually like between 2 and 3 years, we'll get calls from people saying our daycare groups are crazy, like they're too stressful, they're too hard, the dogs are just grumpy with each other. It's because of all those beginning dogs you took that probably you should have never taken. They all need to be dismissed. Or now you're going to raise your prices and stop doing the discounts, and some of your early clients get upset because now you're starting to actually go for the avatar that you wanted to begin with. It's just that initially we lower our standards. We all do it. I will say everybody does it. That's fairly common because it's those clients that are like, I didn't know it was going to cost this much, and don't necessarily get on board with the value you're offering or what you're doing. Whereas you started to market yourself differently to those other clients, the newer clients who are like, oh, I'm totally on board with this. That is just a shift in your avatar. And I would say that's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. It's emotionally tiring because obviously none of us want our clients to be mad at us or upset with us. But in the long run, you just need to stick with your guns and make sure that you are attracting the clients that really value what you're offering and are willing to pay the amount that
Yeah,
helps you to make money.
and I think you can explain to them that you've invested in professional education and training for yourself. You spend more time with the dogs to make sure they're comfortable. And Samantha, we know everything that you've added and are doing for the clients. And so then it's their choice. Really explain that this is our philosophy on care and what we provide, because we have learned this is best for the dogs. And we understand if that's outside your budget, we would hate to lose you, but look around, but we want you to understand everything you're getting for the price. Because if people just call, it's hard to do an apples to apples comparison of services, especially if you're not explaining everything you do that another place may not do. And Samantha, I know you're doing enrichment grooming. There's not many shops doing that. So yeah, that's going to take more time because you're letting the dogs drive what you can do. And I think for most of them, they'll try someplace else and come back to you, even if they do leave on the short term. And that's just because of that trust. And people are really hesitant unless they really can't afford it to change pet care providers. It's a significant trust relationship, and you guys are not taking advantage of people. I have not found a pet business that we've worked with yet that I would say, oh, you're gouging. You're
Yeah.
not. You are earning this money because you're investing in yourself, your business, and your team. And you just need to help your clients understand that costs money. And for your business to be sustainable and there for them and their pet long term, these are the rates you have to charge.
Yeah. And she said, Samantha did say we changed our whole branding and have a new business plan, which is that's exactly the direction you need to go. And it's gonna, the problem with, I feel like our industry is full of so many great people who are just incredibly nice and caring. Like most of us, we're entrepreneurs, but because we're entrepreneurs centered around living animals, I think that just makes us a certain, I don't know, we just have that personality where we just want to help everybody. We want to help every dog. We hate to see a dog that we know we could touch that dog's life if only they would come in for our services or whatever it is. But I can also tell you that the more you try to reach everybody, the less your message will get heard by anyone. And so the more you can really say, my ideal client really is this type of person with this type of job that goes to these type of events, that drive this kind of car, like the more you can narrow that down. And frankly, it is going to be people with discretionary income. um, for a lot of our services, the more you can do that, the more you can reach those people and bring in the revenue you need. And then the great thing is, with that more revenue, if you have that heart to say, I want to create a scholarship fund so I can help the people that truly can't afford my services, but I know I can help their dog. You could, without extra money that you're making, you could create that scholarship fund. You could, but if you don't even succeed in your business because you're not making enough money to survive, you're not going to ever help any dogs. So I feel like it's counterintuitive because we all want to help every dog right at the front. But what I really think we should be doing is making our business profitable and successful so that we can impact more dogs later with whatever revenue we do make. So that's another thing I feel strongly about. All right, let me see if there's any other questions. There's good chats going on in the with each other, so that's
Awesome.
nice. They all are in there talking to each other. I did put that link for the webinar. That'll be later today. And if you do sign up for that and can't make it, there will be a replay, by the way. I meant to say that when I put that link in there. So if you can't make it today at 5 Eastern, just go in there and just sign up. And a couple hours after the webinar, you'll get a replay. All right. I think there's no more questions. So
Okay.
any last minute things you want to talk about? I will put a link in there to the budgets made easy stuff.
Okay.
But
I would say just get started. If you've never done a budget before, just get started with revenue by your service that you provide, plan your payroll, your facility costs, advertising and marketing, because you've got to have a strategy. If you're wanting to grow your revenue, how are you going to do that? And think about, what am I going to do to add clients or grow revenue? And is it going to cost me anything? And just get started and have those monthly meetings with yourself that Robin talked about. And if you see things are different, change your budget. It doesn't have to stay the same. It needs to stay a valuable tool. And then next year, or as you're doing revisions, you'll get better at it. It's just progress, not perfection. But it really will help you. I think a couple of things. It can help you increase your own wage and also give your employees higher wages and benefits if that's a goal. And we know that is for a lot of people. But the other thing I like about having a budget to operate from, it also gives you that challenge and milestone to get to. I know a lot of people want to be like $1 million business. If you do a budget and see that you're at 800,000, you're so close. What could you do next year to add another $200,000 in revenue? It, I think, can energize you and challenge you as a business owner to grow faster and make more money, which is good for your business long term.
yeah, and it goes back to that, what long term, and I know some of you are just starting out, but long term for that, as Susan and I always say, that we want you to exit on your terms, having these types of documents, even if you're not going to do anything with your business, you're going to keep running it for at least 10 years. It doesn't matter. The more you can get your budget process refined, and if maybe year after year it gets a little bit better, by the time you do want to exit, you're going to have a more valuable business because you have those documents. So don't underestimate the long-term impact of that budget to help you get a higher salary, to help you pay your staff more, to help you get impact more dogs and just have a successful business. And Susan and I talk about all the time. This is something most of entrepreneurs that we work with, most of them got into it because they love dogs. But that does not mean you should not be making money from it. And really, we would say this is a business. If you're not making money from it, then it's a lot of work and responsibility to not make any money. And so I would really rethink that as well. We want you to make sure that you're profitable. And our experience is that the people that hear us or come to our Facebook lives or take some of our training, like those, we know that those of you who are doing that kind of education, going to conferences, going to IBPSA, whatever it is, we know that those of you are the cream of the crop in terms of pet care facilities. Those are the ones we want to succeed because we know you're doing things right. We know you're taking really good care of the dogs. We know you're trying to do all the education of your staff. So you should be charging a premium for that and making sure that you understand the value you're bringing to your pet care clients as well. So we really want you to get your budget done. So I put some links in there to the budget toolkit if you're interested in looking at that, as well as that free webinar. Samantha said that this is awesome. The budget program really does help. I'm the worst person with numbers and it's helping me know my numbers, which is really, that's awesome. And that really is the goal, is for you to understand your numbers, because like it or not, if you're the business owner, you really do need to understand your numbers to bring your business to the next level and to just have a more successful business. Lori said, do most of you here today have business managers or CFOs? So if you guys want to comment in that,
Yeah.
I would say the majority of people that we work with have a bookkeeper and not necessarily a CFO. Some of our bigger facilities that we work with have a CFO. So there are some companies that will work with multiple businesses. And so they do your numbers as your CFO, but they may not be exclusive to your business. So there's that opportunity. But I would say there's a lot of businesses that the business owner is the bookkeeper and the CFO. And we would say, at the very least, outsource your bookkeeping, because nobody, like, for whatever you should be getting as your salary as a business owner, the entrepreneur who is the founder of your company, whatever that hourly rate is, that's more than the hourly rate you should be paying a bookkeeper. So we would say a bookkeeper should be the first thing you would outsource in terms of the finances of your business, to do all the data entry. And then that person can help run reports for you. But then ultimately, you are going to have to look over the report. You might have, if you have a bigger business and enough resources, you might have a CFO who runs the reports, builds your budget, helps you to get the data, but you still can't delegate the responsibility of looking over those numbers. Like, you need to sit down with your CFO. But I would say more people that we know don't have CFOs than do.
And I would say just make sure, if you do have that bookkeeping support, that they're staying caught up and that you're getting financials on a timely basis. No later than the 15th of the month, hopefully by the 10th of each month. Because if you need to make change, you need that data right away.
Yeah, and Samantha said she caught a mistake that her accountant made on the P&L, which is awesome.
It is.
So,
And yeah, the mistakes that we made, but yeah, no one's going to care more about your numbers than you do. That's my whole thing. You can't depend, there's a few accountants that will, but for the most part, they're helping so many businesses that they don't really have time to focus on your numbers. And a lot of people don't understand our industry and the numbers, what those ratios should be, labor to revenue. So they aren't giving you that kind of guidance that we bring, having been in this industry for many years. And I can tell you, I made the mistake. You only have so much time that you get to spend on numbers. And for too many years, I spent my time as the bookkeeper versus the CFO looking at the numbers. And my business turned around when I stopped doing the bookkeeping and spent my time with numbers doing the analysis. It made all the difference in the world.
and honestly, that's why we see most people fall behind, because the bookkeeping is a lot, that data entry, it's not, you don't need a lot of education to do it. You need to know, like, here's how much we spent and here's what category should go in. So once you teach someone that, anyone can do it. Anyone you trust to be in your QuickBooks can do it. Um, And certainly you can do it. But like Susan said, if that's going to take you, let's just say 5 hours a month, that's 5 hours a month now that by the time you get all the bookkeeping entries done, you're going to be like, I don't have time to review the numbers because you just don't. You don't have that much time. So it's really better if you're, and I don't would say you probably don't even need 5 hours a month to review the data. You probably
Uh-huh.
need a couple hours to really look at the data. So you're actually saving yourself time and you're going to pay someone else at a lower rate to do the data entry, and then they print the reports and you look at them and get the detail from them that you need. So it's a much better use of your time than
Yeah, and if in the past you've looked at the P&L statement and yeah, what does this mean? The value that the budget brings is you have that comparison and you can say, man, I expected to have 20,000 worth of revenue. We only have 15. What was low? Why was it low? Or my payroll should have only been 15,000 and it was 18. Why is that? That's where your budget brings that value and it helps you make more sense of your P&L because you have that comparison. It makes a huge difference.
yeah, 100%. All right, hopefully this helped to get you thinking about doing your budget. Again, it's October, and so your goal is to get your budget done by the end of the year so that you're going into next year with a plan. Um, Even if it's not even the greatest budget in the world, it doesn't matter. Just get something started and you'll start to get better as you get used to doing it a little bit more and more. And then right now, go put those dates on your calendar when you're going to say, I'm going to look at my actuals versus my budget. Just 12 dates next year. Just pick every third Wednesday or second Wednesday or whatever. Put them on your calendar now and then honor those appointments with yourself. So don't let something interrupt those appointments and make sure you're keeping that appointment with yourself.